So today we are joined by not one, but two expert solicitors, people that we work with and have worked with for 7 or 8 years, and they are John O'Callaghan and Ali Chouhdry of Ronald Fletcher Baker. Now, we've done videos with John before, we've had other members of Ronald Fletcher Baker with us, but today, specifically, we are talking about what you need to know as a buyer at auction and how best to sell something at auction, especially related to the legal pack. So, if you are buying and you've never sent a legal pack to a solicitor, before the auction, you need to watch this video. And if you're selling and you wait to the very last minute to submit your legal pack or give your solicitor any instructions, we're looking at you, don't do that. You need to make sure you're giving yourself the best chance possible to buy and sell at auction without making any mistakes, which could potentially lose both sides money, sellers and buyers. So watch this video to the end because there are absolute gems that you cannot miss out on.
Okay, amazing. Today we have two special guests and we're going to be talking everything about legal packs. And we're going to have this video done in two different perspectives, one from a buyer's perspective, the other one from seller's perspective. And we're going to discuss how to best prepare for an auction from both sides. So, welcome, John, Ali. Can you guys introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what do you do on a daily basis? Obviously, we've done business for 7 years, 8 years together. And but do you want to introduce yourself for the viewers?
Yeah, my name's John O'Callaghan. I'm one of the long-serving partners in Ronald Fletcher Baker, LLP. Sometimes call ourselves RFB for short. And I'm in the one of the property departments in the firm. Having been around a long time, I'm across various sectors, commercial property and residential, and very much involved in supervision of fee owners and planning and so on for the firm. And in recent years, has a lot of exposure to the auction markets as that's become more and more into the mainstream of property purchasing.
Brilliant.
Thanks for having us, guys. I'm Ali Chouhdry. I'm one of the partners at Ronald Fletcher Baker, predominantly a commercial real estate solicitor dealing with commercial real estate, especially heavily involved in your hospitality industry, pubs, hotels, restaurants, etc., up and down the country. But I have a bit of a specialism in auction sales and purchases as well, which I've been doing for donkey's years, honestly. So I head up one of our property teams based in our Baker Street office. So we have a team of, I think it's about 16 staff, made up of solicitors, paralegals, trainees, and head up that team at Baker Street, and that's about it, really. Yeah.
Amazing. So you guys obviously helped us write the legal chapter of our book, and
Twice now.
Yes.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
And obviously we explained that what the legal pack is and stuff like that. But do you guys want to just say a little bit about what a legal pack is for those people who are new to auctions, and so basically it's the first time buying, and why it's so important to have it reviewed before bidding in the auction?
I often take an historical perspective on these things because I've seen so many changes in the industry over the years. At one time, maybe 10, 15 years ago, auctions could be quite hazardous. For the inexperienced buyers, and one had to approach it with a lot of caution because opportunities were taken to unload property which there might be something wrong with, or where something might need fixing or correcting, and that might be where the value is for a purchaser. However, more recently, it seems to me that the auction world is far more in the mainstream and coming more and more into the mainstream. So there's far more participation. Obviously, technology has helped with that. The ability to get properties on the market quickly and to have remote auctions and so on. And so that has led to auctions being more frequent with many more lots in them. And one of the trends, and this was a very gradual process, was to for the seller to create documents to provide documents to encourage the buyer to buy. Going back again many years, you might see the most simple thing, but there might be nothing more than the title to the property. And that's really all you would have to go on. Buyer beware, auction conditions, which largely favoured the seller on that score. And you would need eyes in the back of your head, and you would need to be an experienced buyer realistically in those days. But since then, we found that I think auctioneers have driven this themselves to improve and create a bigger market. The idea that you could give more information to a buyer would encourage the buyer to bid, basically, because they would feel more secure. And from the seller's point of view, it would make the chances of a sale much better.
Yeah, I think that really expands. The more information you provide, expands the amount of people can bid on the property, and that then
makes a bigger market. So, and again, initially people would then provide searches, for example. So at least you would have a search, because that was often one of the major problems with auctions, is that it would take a while to get your search, and therefore the auction would come round before you had a chance to do a search. So people wouldn't even be able to have local authority searches. So they wouldn't be able to find out the things that might reveal, planning enforcement, environmental health notices, this sort of thing. And technology has helped, of course, because it's become far easier to display the documents. You might have to, in the old days when they started doing this, you might have to go down to Savills or something and knock on the door, and they'd have a table or on the day of the auction, they'd have some paper littered on the side, which people would bring along and have a look at. But technology has obviously enabled the importance and key documents to be uploaded instantly, and for buyers to have access to it. So it's created an amazing world, really, I think, where in real time the amount of information can be increased, as it becomes available.
Yeah.
So at one end of the scale, you can have a really good pack, which a seller will put together. Ali will talk about that from the seller's point of view. And that would include pretty much everything, or as much as you can, that you would be providing in a conventional sale, in private treaty, just a normal, where you'd send a contract out, and you'd expect to see the contract with any conditions, you'd expect to see the title, you'd expect to see some forms about, the property information, boundaries, disputes, that kind of thing. Not a big deal for those to be completed from the seller's point of view. People do it every day, and searches and anything else which is relevant. So the idea was switching from a culture of kind of withholding information to a culture of sharing information to try and improve the possibility of a sale. So from the buyer's point of view, nowadays, if you see something, certainly to my mind, with very minimal information, it's going to ring a few alarm bells. You're thinking, well, why can't these people, just provide some material? It's not that difficult.
So obviously, EIG is the biggest provider probably of the legal packs services to auctioneers, and so they've got access to statistical information about the legal packs and how many people actually reads the legal pack before bidding and stuff. And it turns out that probably just under 40% of people who win properties never actually read the legal pack. How do you think, how dangerous is that to just bid on the legal pack that never been read by your solicitor or by yourself even?
It might be perfectly safe if the property's okay and the information is all there, but obviously you're increasing your as a buyer, if you fail to address your mind to that, you're not doing your due diligence. You're potentially parting company with a lot of money. You put your deposit down, 10%. If you find out afterwards there are wrinkles or there are reasons you can't proceed or get a mortgage, then the minimum you've lost is 10%. But you could end up losing even more, because you could get sued by the seller for the seller's potential loss anyway of that particular sale. So if the property sells at a later stage for less, and you as the original buyer are in breach of contract, then you could be up for the difference. So potentially a hazardous decision to take, to put your hand up in the room or the virtual room and buy that property without checking this information. And moreover, I think, and the trend now, at least for that 60%, I mean, I hope a good portion of that 60%, as well as looking at the legal pack, are also taking advice on it. And one of the services that we offer more and more now is a look at the pack in advance. So our regular clients will be saying to us, "I'm minded to bid on, this lot." It might be a very committed person who really has their heart on that lot and will put a lot of energy into it. And we will do a thorough review on the information, and we might even be able to make contact with the seller or the seller's legal representative and say, "Hey, we're interested in this. Can you answer this question? Can you give us a bit more?
Yeah.
Can you give us a heads up on this? Why haven't you put this up?" Which might tease out potential problems, and it might make the lot more attractive to the buyer and equally to the seller in terms of the price.
You'd be surprised how many buyers don't think that that's even possible, where they think, well, for the ones that actually know what a legal pack is, look at the legal pack, whether they send it on to a solicitor or not, they just think, this is it. This is all I'm getting. They don't ask questions of the auctioneer. They don't try and reach out to the seller's solicitor via their solicitor. And all of these things are possible to make themselves more comfortable with the transaction, to get clarity on things. And as you say, if there is something hidden in the background, by asking for something and that's refused, it sheds more light on what that hidden thing may be. So
you'd be actually really surprised. You have those buyers who don't think to ask any questions at all.
Yeah.
But then you also have those buyers that think we can ask this question after exchange. And they'll come to you as, their solicitor, and they'll be like, "Well, I've just exchanged on this. Can you find out whether the tenant's in arrears, or if they've got a CPSE form, or if they've got protocol forms, or any kind of question?" And the response that I would usually give, or my team would usually give, is, "Yeah, we can ask."
But they're under
no guarantee of a response.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Jay said, it's very important to get that information pre-auction, pre-bidding, because the seller is going to be much more motivated to providing that information, because it gives them a better chance of selling the property to you.
Yeah, and I think it's like up to the buyers to really be mindful of asking those questions and not being too motivated by the price or by the apparent price of the property, because even if you buy something for a good price, that good price depends on the contents of the legal pack or whatever might be hiding in the background. And if you don't ask those questions, you never know whether you actually bought something good or not.
Hi, I'm Michael Allison. I'm the Commercial Director at Roma Finance. And at Roma Finance, we understand what is needed to fund a property to achieve those auction deadlines. Our processes are specifically designed so we act with smooth transactions and communicate throughout.
So do you guys have an idea as to, if you were, say, so John, if you're acting for a buyer in this instance, how soon should they be getting in contact with you? Should it be the moment they see the lot? Is it the moment the legal pack comes out? Should you just be opening a file of their interest to do this, in awaiting the fact that a legal pack is going to come through and you'll have work to do? Obviously, the more time you have, the less pressured, and I'm assuming the less costly it's going to be to try and turn around a report on title or a full legal pack review in 48 hours, which, with all reasonableness, would probably be quite a time-consuming, expensive endeavour. But if you were given 2 weeks, for instance, that's probably a far better position, right? If they were to approach you that early on.
2 weeks is a good lead-in time, assuming the pack is full.
Yeah.
What you find sometimes is that the lot goes up, and then the seller's solicitor will quite rightly provide the information as it becomes available.
Yeah.
And sometimes may need to change, for example, the conditions of contract. They may need to change that at some point if something comes to light that they think has to be dealt with. But typically, at least on day one, there's no reason why you can't have the actual title to the property up. and there's no reason why you can't have those basic sort of simple property information forms available. And then other material it can be uploaded as you go. So it's good to get in early, because you can then keep an eye on the progress of that, and you can interrogate it a bit, like you were saying earlier. If you're very interested, you can contact the sellers. I mean, the approach to this can vary, because you get different types of buyers. You get the committed buyer who wants, perhaps for their own occupation, they want this home, and they think they can do it up, and they will be very motivated, and they will be looking at every detail as it becomes available. And from our point of view, we would do a retainer with that client for an analysis of the legal pack, and maybe a report of some sort, of summary report, and a fee might be agreed, which it would be discounted against the full fee.
The conveyance.
If the thing goes to completion.
Yeah.
I mean, what we tend not to like is being contacted kind of right at the last minute by someone who says, "I'm really interested in this property. Can you advise me on the legal pack?" Sometimes we can, and it depends who you are. If you have a relationship with us, you've more chance that we will accommodate that than if you call us out of the blue and ask us to do something like this, because we also have to have a retainer. So we can't just be, having a quick look.
Yes.
As people often say, "Oh, come on, it's not going to take long. Have a quick look." We have to have a proper client retainer. We have to have identification. We have to know who we're dealing with. So those onboarding things can take a little time. And there is risk in this for everyone. So there is risk for solicitors as well. And we're simply not permitted to have that quick look or that quiet chat.
And the shorter the time, the more the risks, right? And also the less of a relationship you have with a client.
Yes.
You never know what actually they need, because you've never acted for them in the past.
Exactly. And there are different types of clients. There are experienced investors. Ali knows a lot of these people who will look at multiple lots in a particular auction.
Yeah.
And for those people, we sometimes engage with them on a slightly different basis, because they are also engaging on a more limited type of what we call it retainer or contract with us, because we have that relationship. They are knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
And we can point them in the right direction, and we can limit what we're saying at that point. Because what we don't want to do, and solicitors will say this to you, is we don't want to be giving people the wrong impression about something, or giving them less than full information, and then subsequently that responsibility reverting to us.
Yeah.
So we also have to manage our client relationship as well. So the more time we have to do that, the better, basically.
Yeah.
I think what you said about the more commercially astute client base is very accurate as well, because what those clients are not going to be doing is calling you at the last minute and saying, can you go through the entire pack and let me know what your advice is. What they're more likely to be doing is saying, I've been through the pack. There's one point that is niggling at me. Can you just have a quick look and let me know what you think? And that really then isn't an issue, because again, you've got that relationship with that client. You know what they want, like you said, Piotr. You know what they want. You know what their requirements are. You know how they conduct their business. So providing your 2 pence on that small niggling point shouldn't really be an issue. But then again, it comes down to the relationship you have with that client, how long you've acted for them, your relationship with them. So those kind of things are very, very important.
And I think that's why we covered like a lot of things in the book about how to review the legal pack from like a buyer's perspective, not to like give people a degree in law and legal packs, but to give them like a opportunity, the practicality before even approaching a solicitor, kind of knowing, oh, those things are missing. Maybe there's even no point going to a solicitor. Maybe I should just discard this property and move on with my life, because there's no point spending money on it. So That's the kind of purpose of that legal chapter in the book that we have. But when people actually know something and they can pinpoint, well, what about those things, then it makes a quicker conversation.
So in your mind, Ali, when you're preparing a pack for sale on behalf of a seller, what's going through your mind? What are your primary considerations? Is it, I need to get this information up front first so I can then populate the special conditions of sale, so the contract to sell? Am I focusing on these instructions up front? Like what? Because it's a time limited situation, right? You know that if you haven't put in for the searches yet, you're probably not going to get them back in time. So what kind of drives you in the process that you follow when someone's instructed you? Are you like, I need X, Y, and Z, and how much of that rests on your shoulders and how much of that you have to rely on the client for?
So a lot of it boils down to who the client is, what their requirements are, and how quickly they want to move. If they've come to me a week before the auction and the lot has been available on the auctioneer's website for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and they've come to me a week before, then yeah, you're right. I'm not going to be able to provide the searches. If it's a leasehold property, I won't be able to get the management pack in time. Yeah. So unfortunately, it will be just very, very basic information that will be provided within that pack. The ideal situation, the ideal circumstances would be where the client approaches us well in advance of the auction date, even before they put the property up in auction, to have a conversation with us about, this is the date I'm looking at for the auction. Is this feasible? Is this possible for you from a legal perspective? And what do you need from me? And then you start engaging with that client in terms of what the property is, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, whether it's occupied, whether it's vacant, whether there are any issues that they're aware of that need to be contained within the auction legal pack. But in terms of what information I feel is completely necessary and helps to sell, helps to advertise a property in order to be able to get the best value for it at auction, will be, as a starting point, well drafted and accurate special conditions. You wouldn't believe the amount of times I've come across special conditions which contradicts itself within the space of one page, and it makes it a lot more difficult for the property to sell at auction. Because again, like I said earlier, commercially astute clients and commercially astute buyers or investors will be looking at that pack, and they will be able to pick up things that are missing very, very easily without even going to their solicitors. If they then do go to their solicitors, then they're going to get a whole list of things that are causing issues. What you're then doing is you're reducing the market for your property. So well drafted and accurate special conditions, title documents, of course, immediately available usually from Land Registry, searches. If the property is a leasehold property, then management pack, LPE1 form. If it's a freehold property that has service charges, etc., then a freehold management pack, protocol forms for residential properties, CPSC forms for commercial properties, occupation
draft transfers, things like that.
Draft transfers, yeah, 100%. If you want to put, if for example the property is occupied and you want to put any additional provisions within the transfer, then it always makes sense to provide that draft transfer at the outset within the legal pack. But again, any occupational lease documents, rent deposit deeds, deposit protection certificates. If it's a residential property, then you want to make sure that you're putting relevant information like a copy of the AST, a copy of the deposit protection certificate, redacted, of course, because there's always a lot of personal information that could breach GDPR. So redact that as much as possible. So deposit protection certificate. What a lot of sellers miss and what a lot of buyers also miss, unfortunately, is that when you're buying or selling a residential property that's occupied, as a buyer, you need to be able to determine whether the tenant has a right to rent. You need to determine whether if you serve a Section 21, it's going to be validly served. So, i.e., if you are renting or letting a property, you need to serve certain documents on the tenant. So you need evidence of that in order to make sure that should the time come when you need to get the tenant to vacate the property, you can do so within the confines of the law. So there are a number of documents that you should be inserting or putting within the auction legal pack that will make it easier to sell at auction. And when you have an auction legal pack that is well drafted, well put together, there is going to be a lot more interest. and where there's a lot more interest, it's going to drive the price up.
Yeah.
So from a seller's perspective, it always is a good idea to have a good legal pack available in good time prior to auction.
Brilliant. I think we see that a lot of the times where like sellers like try to maybe not include certain information in the legal pack. What's your view on that, of just like when people try to hide certain information or not disclose them?
I think transparency is key. If there is an issue with the property, that information should be divulged at a very early stage, because if it becomes common knowledge, or if it comes to the buyer's attention or the buyer's solicitor's attention post-exchange, pre-auction, and it's clear as day that you had that information as a seller prior to auction and you didn't divulge it, then you're going to have an issue where the buyer may claim misrepresentation.
Yeah.
And then you've got a whole different legal battle on your hands, which can be very, very
Then you
expensive.
find yourself having a conversation with David Burns and
Have
his
a
team.
conversation with David, exactly. So I think, again, transparency is key, not just for the buyer's sake, but for your own sake.
That's right. Well, nowadays there's so many of those home REIT properties where there is very little disclosure of information, like even like the leases and stuff. But because things are priced so that those issues are taken into account, and people are then given an opportunity to see how to price those issues or the risks that come with it, like we actually tend to see those properties sell for pretty much the market value of if there were no issues. But if something is disclosed, then people can make up their mind on how to act on those things.
I think what we need to realise is that with the onset, like John said, with the onset of technology in recent years, information is a lot easier to come by. So being able to, or providing the information that is necessary to populate a well-drafted legal pack only assists the seller. Now, if you have a buyer that is commercially astute, they're an investor, they will be looking for property. Usually, they will be looking for properties that have issues, so that they can add value and then sell it on for a profit. So don't think that if you're hiding an issue with a property, it's going to be easier for you to sell. It might actually be easier for you to sell if you provide that information from the outset, right? So because you're going to have a different segment of the market, a different segment of buyers that are looking for properties with problems,
And they value it more than...
exactly, because they can add value by fixing that problem and selling it for a profit.
Yeah, and auction is a place for those problems, right? Because properties sometimes with no roof or like blown up wall, like they actually sell for really good money just because everyone is aware of it and everyone is like looking for a project or something like that. In fact, properties who are perfect, spotless, beautiful, furnished, they sell so badly in auctions. Like they literally struggle so much. So
Because you can't add value to it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, and in terms of like when someone comes to you and they say, okay, I want to sell the property, like what's the best way like of approaching you guys in terms of you acting for the client, either on the buying side or the selling side?
I think we have. How can they get in contact with us? We have a great website. It's very well connected. All of our staff are
description.
All of our staff are on our website with descriptions of their expertise, with their direct dials, with their direct emails. You'll be hard done by to find Central London lawyers who you can pick up the phone to their direct dial and get a hold of within 3 or 4 rings. And that's a service that we provide. We're on the other end of the phone, whether we're a junior solicitor, whether we're an associate, senior associate, partner. We're there. We're there to assist you. But our website is very well made. It provides the information that you need in order to pick the right lawyer for you. Because of the descriptions and the information that we provide for every member of staff.
I think also it's very helpful to be in both camps. So we're acting equally for sellers as buyers, and we're also acting in situations where things have gone wrong and disputes have arisen. So that experience, that shared experience, is in the atmosphere. So
Yeah, and we had cases where I think clients were buying, and I think Ali was dealing on the buying side for the client, but also David was assisting because of the complexities and issues arising from contracts or lack of disclosure of information. So it's always good to have those things in the same like house, basically, because you guys communicate so much better than if there were 2 or 3 external firms dealing with things.
yes, and again, it's those situations, and it doesn't happen all of the time, where something doesn't quite go right, and where the buyer, for example, may find himself up against the clock and not have access to the finance that they thought they would have access to, because possibly there was something in the legal pack they didn't anticipate that was a problem for a mortgage, or they just simply haven't got enough time to sort themselves out. So in those situations, it's helpful to be able to have that different strand of advice, which is advice about disputes and courts, and what happens in those situations, and how you can push back, how you can defend what seems to be a threatening action being taken by a seller, for example, to forfeit a deposit. Because there are often spaces which can be explored and which can be challenged. So I think that's a very useful set of different skills all under one roof.
I mean, we've been quite lucky over the years. When I worked for an auction company, Ronald Fletcher Baker were the solicitors in the room. That if a buyer didn't have a solicitor available, they would take their contract, and Ronald Fletcher Baker would sort them out. But since then, we have a referred business. We've done our own business, and even if we were to call up Ali or Mustafa or David or whoever and say we're dealing with this issue, who is best? It is barely even a breath before they say, I'm going to put you in touch with so-and-so. So it's one of those things. It's everybody knows what their expertise or what the caseload is, and they know the best person to put you onto to get the most out of it. And we've dealt with solicitors before where it's the first response is, yes, I'll deal with it. And then you may be dealing with someone who isn't quite astute on that area of law or as experienced as you'd hope. Not that they're bad for any reason, but you do get put with the right person. If even on the website you pick up the phone to the wrong person, you'll be put onto the right person to make sure that you're given the best service possible. So we've always been good with stuff like that, especially with Ronald Fletcher Baker. And there's a couple of heroes that we always, in the Buyers Club, we always say, okay, this is a last minute thing. You need to call Vina immediately. She just pulls it out the bag every time. And, there's different, and we're quite lucky, I say again, because we've been doing so much business over the 7-8 years, we get to know the solicitors exceptionally very well. So I think we're quite good at picking out who would be best to deal with what now.
We're like external people.
I think what I'd add to that is it's not necessarily what's kind of is published. So quite often these situations are not about what is the strict law on what happens when there's been a delayed completion and a notice to complete. It's often the experience of the way things are looked at and approached, the way a judge would look at something, the way another commercial opponent on the other side would look at something commercially. I mean, so it's not you can't look this stuff up necessarily.
No. I mean, we had a brilliant one a couple of years ago. We had someone from the Buyers Club buy a development site in Farnham or Farnborough or something like that, and they were struggling to complete on time. They'd renegotiated the price. This wasn't auction. This was private treaty, and they got served with a notice. So we got David involved, and he said, okay, the notice was incorrectly served, so now they have to reserve the notice. That gave our client an extra 10 days, I think, in order to get the funding to complete. But some people, if they haven't got a commercially minded solicitor or a litigant solicitor that can go through a document and pick pieces, whether it's just a minor thing here or there, they go, well, actually, you can't rely on that. So now you have to reapply, and stuff like that's brilliant. And a lot of people If they're served with that notice, we'll just go, yes, sir, thank you, sir. That's my notice. I have to accept it. But I've always found, especially with you guys, is that you'll actually look at what the notice is. You'll look at what's been served and say, actually, I don't think that's validly served. And we're going to respond with the points as to why we don't think it's validly served. And that's always been, that's saved quite a few lives.
Service and technical things are very important. Again, many solicitors and conveyancers and so on doing routine work for years and years will just never come across this situation.
No,
I mean,
no.
it doesn't happen. So and when it does happen to those individuals, they don't necessarily have the experience of how you deal with these things. And as you say, do you take that notice at face value, or do you explore it, and
Yeah.
do you criticize it, and do you challenge it, and what tools are there to help you through that difficulty?
Well, I think we've got through quite a bit there. Thank you very much, guys, for leaving the office on completion Friday to spend an hour or so with us. It's greatly appreciated.
No, so thank you very much for having us. It's always a pleasure working with you guys and your clients, and long may it continue.
Definitely, yeah. And we'll put your details down in the description of this video for people to contact you. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Pleasure.
guys. Very, very enjoyable session, and as Ali says, enjoyable to work with you and to help the people who are in your world where we can.
Okay, guys, so our book is about to be published. It will be a new updated version of Before the Hammer Falls. And if you want to pre-order that book, make sure you click the link in the description of this video. It's packed with content. It's packed with practical information. And more than that, there's extra available resources on our website as well. So make sure you pre-order the book, and it will be launching soon.